Okay, so the kind of the order of the pedals that my pedal board is in, it first comes out of the guitar into my volume pedal. From my volume pedal, it goes straight to this overdrive, comes down to the tuner, comes over to this overdrive, into my first delay, into my second delay, and then it hits reverb, and then it hits tremolo. So kind of the basic order of a pedal board should be your volume pedal, your overdrives, and you could put your tuner before or after the overdrive, doesn't really matter. Kind of depends. You could flip them around and one may sound better than the other. This is just the order that works for me. So like I said, what works for me may not work for you, but you know, you have tons of options. And then you want to do your time-based effects, so you move over to your delay. So from this overdrive to this delay to this delay, and then last we do reverb. This is kind of a unique setup because this also has the tremolo built in. Usually you want tremolo to go before your delays but after your overdrives, but on this one I really can't choose, so this is kind of an anomaly, but that's okay, it still sounds really good. Okay, so some just basic sounds of what all of this sounds like. So I'm running from the Jazzmaster all the way through the pedal board into the normal channel of the AC30, and then this is just what basic tone sounds like. Okay, so it comes into the volume pedal, and I'll show you how I use that later, but into this first overdrive. Is just a really big monster overdrive. It's really great for lead lines, it's great for rhythm parts, it's just a really good versatile overdrive. And then that comes into the tuner. Tuner just makes sure that I sound good and I don't have off strings. And this is a great way to tell if you have old strings. If you're having a hard time tuning, that might be an indicator that you have old strings. Or you may just have a bad cable somewhere in your pedal board. So this kind of serves multiple functions. And then moving over to the Timmy, that's also like a light overdrive, or you could use it as a boost. And these two sound really good when you stack them together, so if you do both. So that's really important. If you have two different types of overdrives, you can run your amp a little hot so you get a natural, nice light breakup, and then you can use one pedal to kind of send it over the edge so you get a nice, just good crunch, good amp tone, and then you can hit it with another overdrive and really get a monster overdrive tone. So having two good overdrives that work together, that kind of complement each other, that you can stack together is really important. That way, in verses, if you kind of want to back off and you want a little bit more cleaner tone or a little sweeter tone, you can just use one. And big choruses or lead lines, you can turn both on and just get like a monster kind of U2 rock tone. So we'll turn that off, and then we'll go into the delay. So most of the delay tempo settings that I use are just that classic dotted 8 sound. Virtually everyone in worship music uses it. A lot of it stems from U2, The Edge, but this is what it sounds like. So it's got that dotted 8 sound, so it sounds like. kind of just the go-to standard delay for all types of lead lines. I use it for some swells, but mostly I see a lot of guys using this for lead lines, like those big U2 parts, or guys that play for like Phil Wickham or Hillsong or John Mark McMillan or Steve Fee, Vicky Beachy. A lot of those guys will use some delay that's very similar to this with that classic dotted 8 setting. You could do also other cool sounds. You could do reverse modulate, and you could also do a tape sound, but I kind of leave the tape sound for this one. So this one I mostly use for swells, kind of those whale sounds, kind of like Coldplay does. So I'll just kind of set the time randomly. I'll do a little bit of tape age, a little bit of artifact, and then I'll have the mix up and the repeats up, so then when you use it in conjunction with your volume pedal, you get that cool. Classic like Coldplay swells, get like those big whale sounds. It also sounds really cool if you do like full chords as well, like kind of like on the build of a chorus or like at the end of a verse, so you could do as well. You could also throw in some of the reverb and kind of put some of that stuff up, so you could do like the really big ambient stuff. So the reverb and the delay sound really good together, but you just want to be mindful of a couple things. As a guitar player, especially here at Rock Harbor, we only have one electric player. So really you're feeling the rhythm and the lead roll, so you don't want to be swelling all the time, but you also don't want to be playing just big chords and lead lines all the time, so you need to be able to balance between the two. Swells work really, really well for down moments when a pastor's talking or when a worship leader's talking, but you also want to keep in mind that you don't want to compete with the keyboard player, and you also don't want to compete with whoever's talking on stage. So if you're playing over them and you're playing really loud, long, obnoxious swells, it's going to be hard for people to hear. So it sounds really good, but it could be really distracting. So just something to be mindful of. You just want to be tasteful with your swells. You know, if you're doing swells all the time, then they're not that special, and you're really not adding that much color. So like I said, you need a balance between swells, lead lines, big chords, and also not playing. So it's really good to know when to play, but it's also really good to know when not to play. That's a big thing as well, and we can talk about that later. The last thing in the pedal board chain is my tremolo. So this is what it sounds like. So you could use that in a number of ways. If you have a delay, tap it a time. Sounds really good if you're doing like a line. Good if you're doing like some type of line or part, but then it also sounds really good on swells as well. some type of worship set, I really like to touch all the pedals. I'll use delay quite a bit. I'll try to balance between the overdrives depending on what kind of song we have. If I want more big rock tone, if I want more just kind of sweet tender tone, swells, I'll dial in a sound for the delay, for the tape delay and the verb, and then tremolo I'll just kind of add in tastefully. I won't use it all the time because people kind of get annoyed by it because it's a really good effect, but if we use it too much it's going to drive people crazy, so just keep that in mind. So that's kind of how everything works, and you can use them in any order, any combination. I really suggest that you sit down and kind of figure out how to get the most out of each pedal and kind of what works for you, what kind of sound you're going for. Listen to your favorite records and try to duplicate and replicate what kind of sounds they get, because for a lot of us that's how we did it. We listened to albums and tried to figure out how the heck do I make that sound, and then you just sit down and practice a few days a week and try to come up with your own style. And you may not copy exactly someone's style, but in the process you may come up with your own style, so that's really cool as well. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're kind of building your guitar rig, or you're changing stuff around, or you're trying to figure out how does all this work, how do I kind of make my way in music and kind of be my own guitar player. So that's kind of an overview of how everything works and sounds together.